Dzisiejsze drożdże, tak jak każde, są oczywiście wyjątkowe, ale dzisiejszy odcinek nagrywam dla Was z Czeskiej Republiki, a dokładnie z Moraw, a jeszcze dokładniej z miasta Mikulow, gdzie zaprowadziła mnie moja przewodniczka po Morawach czeskich, Klara Kollarova, która jest dzisiejszą moją gościnią. Przez ostatnie 3 dni była moją przewodniczką. Ciągała mnie, słuchajcie, od regionu do regionu, a dzisiaj gości w podcaście. I również chciałam wam powiedzieć, że jeżeli będą jakiekolwiek problemy z dźwiękiem, słyszycie różne takie dźwięki w tle, to jest to dlatego, że nagrywamy po prostu na ulicy. W sensie nie to, że po prostu stoimy na ulicy, ale siedzimy sobie na zewnątrz przed bardzo ładną enoteką, przed winebarem i postanowiłyśmy, że tutaj będzie najfajniej nagrywać. Ludzie na nas patrzą, my patrzymy na ludzi i porozmawiamy sobie z Klarą o Czechach, o czeskim winie, o trendach, o apelacjach i jeszcze o kilku innych rzeczach, które mam w mojej głowie. Natomiast ważna rzecz jest jeszcze taka, że ja na razie mówię po polsku, ale za chwilę niestety, no możemy mówić oczywiście w takim czeskim-polskim, ale ja już się zorientowałam, że ja tak naprawdę w momencie, kiedy rozmawiamy o winie, to ja ten czeski-polski rozumiem, ale jak zaczynamy rozmawiać tak bardziej, zwłaszcza jak Klara zaczyna mówić zbyt szybko, bo się rozpędza, to ja go nie rozumiem. I nie mogę sobie pozwolić na to, żebyście wy po drugiej stronie też nie rozumieli. W związku z tym ważna informacja, ten odcinek będzie po angielsku. Ja również rozumiem, że nie wszyscy mówią po angielsku, więc przepraszam was, że ten odcinek jest po angielsku. Nie mamy jak zrobić tutaj subtitles, czyli napisów po polsku. I dlatego ten odcinek puszczamy jako taki ekstra odcinek dla tych z was, którzy są w stanie go wysłuchać po angielsku i dowiedzieć się super ciekawych rzeczy o winach z Czech, a zwłaszcza winach z Moraw. No i moją przewodniczką tutaj po Morawach i naszą właśnie dzisiaj gościnią jest ktoś bardzo specjalny, ponieważ Klara jest narodową sommelierką Czech. Ja za każdym razem, jak to mówię, to aż mam ciarki, bo być narodową sommelierką to jednak jest coś, słuchajcie. To jest po prostu coś wspaniałego. Również wiem, że Klara teraz jest nie tylko narodową sommelierką, ale właśnie mi też powiedziała, że w ogóle zajmuje się, wiecie, organizacją degustacji, kolacji, specjalnych eventów takich rządowych, tak? Że to ona wybiera wino na kolację, opowiada o nich i wreszcie ci, wiecie, politycy, którzy tu przyjeżdżają, to piją coś porządnego. W sensie, jeszcze jedną rzecz powiem, zanim dam dojść wreszcie do słowa Klarze, to, że od kilku dni jestem tutaj w Czechach i nie zdarzyło mi się jeszcze spróbować złego wina. A teraz już dołącza do mnie Klara, której mamy mnóstwo pytań do zadania. Klara, powiedz nam trochę o takiej historii win czeskich. Kiedy w ogóle zaczęto tutaj uprawiać wina?
So I think the very important thing was, of course, the breaking of communist reign here in Czech Republic. Before that, it was the classic stuff, you know, the Cistercian monks and the religion
romance,
and Charles IV. But that's maybe something you can read in the books. But to make the shortcut of the modern history, we have to start with 1989, which was, of course, the end of the communism. So then it took a while to really try to breathe up, I would say, have a look around. And then in 1990s, there was the project of restituting the goods that were taken by the communists, but also privatization of the before national companies. So there were really new wineries created, some by buying the national ones. So this would be now the biggest wineries in Czech Republic. And then the small winemakers would start to gather their own vineyards and they would start to do the family businesses. So in 1995 then we had the first wine law. So this brought a lot of...
In 1995.
In 1995, it was a break because we had the first wine law, which set the first categories, where we adopted the German system of labeling the wines by the variety, so like Riesling and Welsh Riesling and Hibernal or whatever, and then adding it a special attribution that would stand for quality wine. So like in Germany, Cabinet, later harvested wines and stuff like that. So this is still valid in Czech Republic, but we are now also a little bit more thinking about the place of origin. So the Roman appellation system that is coming to be much more spoken about than the old, classification. Because that's not important anymore, I would say.
If I can say something, I always, when I teach about wines, I teach about different classifications, I am a little bit laughing at the classifications based on just sugar, for example, or the classifications like Spanish classifications based on the time spent in the barrel. I think that the French approach to the classification based on the terroir is much more important because wine is the terroir.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we will maybe come to this in a minute. I will finish the short history. So then we were supposed to enter the European Committee. And before that happened, we tried to plant as many vineyards as possible because, at the time of entering the EU, this would have been the total amount of vineyards that we were allowed to plant.
Seriously?
Yes. So we planted like from...
So it was about the amount of the hectares.
So we ended up with 18,500 hectares of planted vineyards, and this would be now the maximum that we can plant. But we are a little bit beneath that now because some of the vineyards were rooted out for not being perfect. So we went up very rapidly from 11,000 to 18,000 nearly hectares. So then this was really like the beginning in 2004. Of the, I would say, a little bit more professional approach to wine. So from then I would say that the wine business really took its actual look. So we have few of the real big companies that will be producing more than 1 million bottles. And then I would say the majority that would be around from 50 to 3,100 bottles, and then the really small ones, which would be doing a lot of wine that is just drank in the wine bars or in the cellars at one period. So I would say also from economical point of view, we sell quite a lot of wine in supermarkets. So this is, of course, a little bit of problem. Because supermarket is a really tough market with the basic wines that are gaining such great quality lately from France, Italy, and everywhere else. Really, the quality is like rapidly going up. So it seems to be a little bit difficult for our producers to keep up with this, I would say, increase of quality and keeping up the same price.
But this is interesting. But also at the same time, you drink more than you produce.
Yes.
So it's not such a big problem for the producers because even if they don't sell in the supermarkets, they sell like in the cellars, in the restaurant, in the private shops, in the vinoteques. Yes or no?
Well, it's with COVID, it has changed a little bit. And I think the classical old ways of selling really collapsed. And then many winemakers stayed with a lot of bottles in the cellar, and especially with the concurrence really from the world around that is also coming to Czech Republic, all the wines everybody wants to sell, and with the decrease in consumption, we even though have problems. So I would say those who really focus on quality and maybe they work well from the beginning with the gastronomy, and they have a really good quality name, these then have problems, but many of the other they do have problems. So we definitely stand in front of a big question about what to do. We know where the problem is because the yield that we get from 1 hectare is officially 5.6 tons per hectare, which is really low.
Yes.
And therefore we cannot economically handle to sell wine as cheap as the other countries.
So but at the same time,
Yeah.
I think that Moravian Czech wines are really cheap for the quality. Like the relation between quality and the price is absolutely stunning. And I think that's why also, like in Poland, we like really Czech wines. We like Moravian wines. And a lot of Polish wine lovers are coming here because of all the festivals, everything which is happening here, good food and really amazing wines.
So that's true. I would say that there is also a question of the potential of the clients that drink wine here in Czech Republic. Mm-hmm. I think that majority of people who likes quality wine is going abroad and tasting a lot of wines, and I would say even in the higher segment, the quality price ratio is a little bit better than in Czech Republic. Although we tasted many good wines that were cheaper, still some people would say the maximum amount they want to spend on wine would be 150 crowns, which would be maybe 7-8 euros. Mm-hmm. So in this quality range,
in this price range, yeah.
In this price range, majority of producers, they're not able to produce the wine.
Yeah.
So it's more like 10 plus euros. And this is for the normal person, I would say, unacceptable. And for the people who are used to drink international wines, they would either go for the best quality, but they look for really dry wines. And I think a lot of Czech wines is made with residual sugar.
That's true. And also I think that's why Polish people love it.
Yes, because that has to do with the grownness or the adult, with the grownness of the consumers.
Yeah, and a little bit the sweet tooth of all these, countries which were related to the socialism, communism, and Soviet Union. Yeah.
Yes, I think it comes with that because in that time, and it still is valid, if the wine is not perfect and you add a little bit of sugar, the wine tastes much better. Of course.
Yes.
So this is something that the other countries don't do, mm-hmm. and therefore, people who are used to drink really dry wines and they come back to Czech wines, sometimes they are surprised that there is far too much sugar in it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yes.
So I would say yes, as Polish market is not as grown up yet.
Come on.
Yeah, well, you have the sweet tooth, just like we, or the majority, of course, It's growing, but that's what you are used to, and it takes time to kind of focus on the quality and on the aftertaste of the wines. And when you start focusing on that, that's why I mean that it's maybe not so adult yet, because if you start drinking wine, you focus on the first sip, but if you are more experienced, you would definitely wait for what happens in the mouth if you follow the wine. And then this is where the truth comes up. Yeah. And if you have too much sugar and not too much of, character in the wine, then you would end up with those people who are not looking for the aftertaste. And every market eventually will evolve.
Develop.
Yeah, so... Evolve. Of course, we can say we want to keep this style, but we will have to always look for export markets that are a little bit young. Like, I don't know, I would say Asia, but that's too broad because mm-hmm. Japan, there's no sweet wine there. Yeah. Because they like the umami and they are mm-hmm. quite used to, drink dry wines. Mm-hmm. But I would say maybe South Korea or maybe. China.
But also, a question for you. Because globally, people are going away from sweet wines. And I'm not talking only about Polosłodkie, Polosluche, but like even really good quality sweet wines like Tokaj introduced like dry wines in Douro Valley before all the grapes were going for the production of port, and now we are doing fantastic dry wines. So everybody is going away from the sweetness. What about Czech Republic? Are the winemakers here also are seeing this tendency to avoid sugar?
They don't believe it will come.
Really?
I think yes. It's funny. I mean, those who really look for the great quality and that want to show the terroir, the place of origin, they definitely do take this in consideration. So they would maybe divide the wine into different lines. So the one line would be a little bit more approachable for, I would say, most people, like a more mass production. But here you have to work economically with higher yields, and you do not talk about terroir here. But if you want to produce wine that would attract foreign consumers who are in the wine business, you really need to go dry and terroir focused.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I always recommend to the winemakers, because they would always say, but the sweet wine is the first sold. And I say, okay, it's fine. I understand you need to pay the bills, but you can just do sweet wines, because people who drink sweet wine, they don't really care if it's Hibernal or if it's Solaris or if it's Pinot Gris or if it's something else. So if you just do two cuvées that would be sweeter, one that is aromatic and one that is non-aromatic, you will please everyone. And like this, you will have much more time to focus on each of the wine that actually, I would say, maybe deserve your attention, because you have to work much more on the quality of those wines.
This is extremely interesting what you are saying. Like people who like sweet wines, like semi-sweet wines, they will drink anything, so it doesn't matter if you do like single varietal, like 15 labels of single varietal semi-słodkie wines. It's really stupid. Waste of energy, as you said.
So,
really.
And if they say we want to taste more, you can say, well, this is like the wine for you, but now I recommend maybe you try a wine that is not so high in acidity, because sometimes people mix that. So you can taste my two Grüne Veltliners that are maybe aged in oak, because this, makes the wines really soft on the palate. And like this, you can educate the person that they would say, oh, you're actually right, because there is a lot of flavors going on. And so I think this is the way that we have to accept, and it's the heavy one, but this is the only one way, I think. Absolutely. If we don't want to like wake up crying.
And just it's a really important thing that also I noticed, that people mix acidity with sweetness, so they don't want like dry wines, because they think that dry wines will immediately be high acidic wines, which is not always true. And here I tasted like the grape Palava, which is the new grape in Czech Republic, not only Moravia, but in general in Czech Republic.
In Czech Republic, you wouldn't plant it in Bohemia because it's too cool.
Moravia.
Yeah, definitely Moravia.
Yeah, so this is like a new grape, and when I say new grape, is that you need to know that new grapes are still created. They are like crossing of two different grapes. In this case, is the crossing between very aromatic Gewürztraminer and then the other one I always forget. It's
Müller-Thurgau.
Müller-Thurgau, yeah.
Which is also slightly aromatic, but is more juicy and brings the acidity that sometimes you miss in Traminers.
Yeah.
So it was really like very clever to do this. So the grape, because it's aromatic, is perfectly accepted by the consumers, but also by the winemakers, or the vineyard managers, because it has good yields, and this is what you need. And au contrary, if you want to make dry Palava style, you actually need to leave a little bit more of yield on the vine, because of course, you need the grapes don't ripe so early and they keep acidity. And like this, you end up with slightly aromatic, like really nice aromatic profile wines with good acidity, a low alcohol. And this is really something that I think is really... These wines are really charming.
Yeah, and when we say good acidity, it doesn't mean that people who doesn't like very acidic wines will not appreciate them. Because also I think that the aromatic grapes, they give you this impression of sweetness because of the aromas of sweet tropical fruits. And also we talked, because we are in the region of Mikulov now. Yes. We are in the city of Mikulov. And this is the region, you tell me that this is the region where especially Welsh Riesling is very popular and very highly planted. And a lot of local wines are made from Welsh Riesling grape. There is like one episode of Dzikie Drożdże podcast just about Graszewina Welsh Riesling, nice. About the whole history of the name and all the misunderstanding of the name, like Riesling Vlaski, why it's Vlaski, why it's Welsh. So I already explained all that.
Oh, perfect.
So if you want, just listen to the episode about Welsh Riesling. And actually, I'm a big fan of Graszewina of Welsh Riesling. And also, we said that a lot of Welsh Riesling I made with a little bit of botrytis, but they are made in the dry style. But still, this botrytis aroma in the wine will make you also a little bit tricked and you can also appreciate Welsh Riesling, I think, even if you don't like very, very dry, high acidic wines.
That's true, yeah. Because also this like honey flavors that comes with the botrytis, with this, but we are not talking like botrytis in like you imagine like
Tokai.
Cibeba in Tokai.
Yeah.
But we are talking like just slightly brown skin, and just this is enough to change the aromatic profile or to change the chemical compounds in the skin. And then this brings these like floral, slightly honey tones. And with the slightly higher acidity, because Welsh Riesling has good acidity, great acidity actually. That's why historically it was also used for sweet, noble sweet wines and sparkling wine. So you go from one end of ripeness to the other end of ripeness. So it's really quite versatile, great variety. And I think Mykolaiv has its own region, but there are also other places. We don't talk that much about them. And I think it's a shame because we have Welsh Riesling really in every sub-region. And I think the winemakers have yet to come to find their own face of the Welsh Riesling. And I think it can be really inspirative, and they can find some other characters that, they will be their own and they will not like copy the style of Mykolaiv.
That's true, yeah.
Welsh
And
Rieslings.
let's talk about, because you told me really funny thing about the appellations in Czech Republic. In Poland, there is now like a big discussion. Should we create the first Polish appellation? Is it time already? Should we do that or not? And actually, when we started this podcast, you said that your modern history actually started in the 21st century. So you have like a long history of winemaking, but the modern history of winemaking is young, exactly like Polish. So tell me this really funny concept of appellations in Czech Republic.
Yeah, so I don't like to say that because it shows that we didn't learn the best from our neighbors who had a long history,
like Austrians,
Austria has a quite short modern history.
That's true.
Because after the wine scandal in 1985, they were really in like huge depression. And
there is an episode about Austrian wine scandal at Dzikie Drożdże as well.
Super. So so they actually had to really rethink the whole business. And in Wachau, even before that, they were already thinking that they need some classification. So they took it from a little bit different end, I would say. So they have the classification of Steinfeder, Federspiel, and Smaragd, and I'm sure you already had an episode on that as well.
Actually, not.
Well, it's time then. Maybe if you don't know, you can always call me. You can bring up some new themes. But they did that, and they did want to really protect their terroir because in that time they already knew that there is a great potential in promoting the single vineyards in their own style of classification. So from lightest to the most heavy ones. And this really, in the beginning of 21st century, when the whole Austrian wine community started to think about it, they already had wines that had a lot of success internationally. Now you also have to think about the economics and about the market, that you need to market something that you actually have in the vineyard. So of course, in Weinviertel, which was really damaged mostly by the scandal, so you need to find a way how to promote the grape variety that is difficult to explain, difficult to pronounce, and there is so much of it, and you need to find your own style and kind of make
identity.
it short, and the identity, and that's what they did, and it was great. So they created the first appellation, and then now they go even further. So the whole area is classified, but with an intention behind. And this is how I'm getting to Czech Republic now, because this has been a very long introduction. But you now get to the point where you have first region, and then you notice that you have done maybe some mistakes. Maybe it's too big. Maybe you didn't express it as well. So for the other regions, they were thinking a little bit more deeply about the territories that are historical and about the territories that would have something in common. Because if you find something that's in common, then you can marketing it. If it's a mess, then it's really difficult to say, come and taste our wines because they are great. This is really... nothing. It's not a marketing. I think that in Poland it's still a mess, and that's why it's not the moment for the appellations. And in Czech Republic also. Yes, it's I would say we kind of divided the regions into 4 sub-regions. So somebody would say, well, why don't we make the basic appellation on the sub-regions? But it's not so easy because some of them are a little bit more compact. Some of them are very loose in the wine regions, and some of them could have different terroirs. From 2009, there was a voice that was yelling for a commission that would actually think about how to do it in the proper way, like in France, where they have the INAO, the National Institution for Appellation d'Origine, it didn't happen, and there was a new law that only said, you can create your own appellation if you have a group of winemakers and you make your own rules. Yeah, and this is important because you told me that a group of winemakers can be two. Yes, or 2 is a group. Yes. So there is like an appellation where only 2 producers can be, and it exists. Yeah. Yes. So it's a little bit like like the Grand Cru in Burgundy. Yes. So they did it in a purpose because they saw that if there is a place that really has a terroir, and you do somebody who doesn't understand it properly, turn it into appellation, and he would include more vineyards than needed in in the specific terroir. So you again lose the idea of the special terroir. So there were many people who created many different, I would say more like associations of winemakers that would be living near, that would share maybe the common idea. But it's very difficult, of course, if you have many people and many winemakers who have different vineyards, different plantations, different grape varieties, to come up to something that makes sense. Because, that's true. Of course, everybody wants to profit out of it. Because if you create it and you put money in the marketing, then you want to, have it back. So it's now difficult. We have 17 of them. Some are very successful. Some are not successful because people do not promote it, and they are not working together. And then besides that, we have some of the association that didn't use the appellation system. We call it VOC, Wine of Original Certification. And they decided to do their own thing just for one village, like we were discussing in Korek. So there were 2 villages that connected together and created actually something that is working perfectly. And what is the name? It's called Dunajovické kopce. Exactly. And there is no VOC because they said it's only for, there's such a mess in it that if we put a new one on the map, we lose what we want to communicate. So we want to communicate our 2 wineries, the greatness of the Welsh Riesling and our own profile. And we don't need appellation for that because it doesn't bring anything. And there is also another appellation, which you showed me today, which is called the Blue Mountain. Yes. And that works very well. And that works. Can you tell us something about that? There are a few that are working well. The first one is called VOC Znojmo. So this really is the regional appellation. And this works because the winemakers decided they will have 3 grape varieties. It's Sauvignon, Grunewaldliner, and Riesling. The region is kind of smaller. People work very well with it. They do a big wine event with the king, on the horse, and it's like, you taste the wines, and it's really working very well. It was the first appellation system that consists really the whole of the region. You don't have to be a member, but you can. So this worked. And then we had a few that didn't work. And then we have this Blue Mountains, Modré hory, that is connecting 5 different villages. They create all together a small flower. And this is named after... the label, the symbol is the small flower with 5 petals. Yeah. Yes, thank you. And this is like an appellation that really focuses on red grapes because this is the region for red grapes. And the winemakers...
The region is Velkopavlovsko.
Velkopavlovicko.
Pavlovicko, yes. Yeah. Velkopavlovicko.
And if we talk Velkopavlovicko, it's Blaufränkisch and a little bit of Svatovavřinecké, San Laurent, and Blauer Portuguese. And these winemakers, they really communicate together. They do a lot of seminars. They invite a lot of winemakers from abroad. And they really are on the track to really understand what the terroir can offer to winemaker or to the consumer. And this really works very well. But in the neighborhoods, because of course if you see that something is working, you want to copy paste. This doesn't work. So you have an appellation of Kraví Hora that is right next door. And you have maybe 3 wines with this appellation because you don't find them and they don't produce them. And it's based on grape variety that is not really planted. So this doesn't really make any sense. Yeah, so I would say there is another one that is called, right next to it, that is called Růžové hory. And then, so that means the Rosé hills. And they have different grapes and they produce different wines, but it's a mess if you have all this on one place. So finally, we go to the happy end. So the University of Agriculture that is situated in Brno, and it has a faculty of viticulture and winemaking in Lednice. They got it's not a bursary, but what you call it, like you get a lot of money to
bursary,
to research.
For
the research.
Yeah, from the state. Yeah,
Yes.
so it's like.
I can't find the word.
Yeah, me either.
So it's like
But
they
you
got the
understand
money
it.
for the project.
Yes, exactly.
So it's a project for 5 years.
Financement.
Yeah. So something. Money.
Yeah.
To do it, because of course to do the research, on history, geology, and winemaking and the original grape varieties, you need a lot of time and of course you need a lot of money. So but they got it, and so now it's really looking like everybody feels that we need it so badly if we want to start, to have the new influence or not the new like impact and the new flash. For the consumers, because they are like all like
lost.
So they really do research that would be based on history, terroir, and the culture.
Yeah, exactly like the Austrian are doing since years.
And French.
But yes, and French. But French is like a long story, but Austrian are creating it right now. And this is like the creation of the system of appellation for the whole country. It really needs some research and a lot of money and a lot of investment of time and people,
and also
knowledge, etc.
Yeah, it needs somebody who's objective.
Yes, also. Yeah.
Because, and somebody who is a strong person, has a strong personality, and will be able to say, so now we stop the discussions because it leads to nowhere, and we will decide how to do it.
That's true.
And this is really about creating like the regional level. So we do not talk at all Premier and Grand Cru vineyards, because if we talk about appellations, the first thing is, but who will say what will be the Grand Cru? And it will be somebody, and I will not agree. So from the beginning, the first thing that, on every meeting you say is, we are not classifying the Grand Crus for the next, let's say, 20 years.
Of course, yeah. This is the last thing to do during the classification. Yeah.
Like we see with VDP, like we see in Austria with Österreichische Traditionsweingutters.
Wow, she knows how to pronounce it. I never know.
I don't know how to pronounce VDP, so it's like for something.
Yeah, this is even worse.
So there are many examples, and unfortunately, it took us far too long to, learn
to realize
from it.
that. Yeah.
But now we are on the track.
Okay, now I have 2 last questions.
Yes.
So now, can you recommend to Polish listeners some wine festivals to attend in Moravia?
Yes, so wine festivals, I would say this really depends on what style you're looking for, because...
let's give them 3.
Okay, so if you like natural scene, and I know Polish wine consumers
it's
like
a thing
that.
in Poland. It's a thing.
So there are, I would say, three major ones. One is called the July Rendezvous. This is in. It's going to be in the end of July.
July.
This is in Velké Bílovice. So this would be the biggest wine village, wine town in Czech Republic. With quite many natural winemakers like Milan Nestarec. So if you come to Velké Bílovice, you can visit this very famous Czech natural winemaker. Then there is one in Brno that is called the Natural Wine Fest. It has been this year already. I think it was in end of May. It's not far away. It's not a long time ago. And then the last but not least would be the one that is done by the oldest organization. It's the Natural Wine Fest Magna Charta. I don't know.
It's Magna, yeah? So authentic Magna Festival.
Magna Festival, that's the one. So, so this would be the three biggest ones. Then, because Moravia is nearer to majority of Polish wine lovers, so they will probably not come to Prague to the festival that is called Praha Pije Víno, but it can be connected with the sightseeing and maybe with visiting the small, tiny wine regions of Bohemia, which we didn't mention yet.
Yeah.
And I think it's a shame because Bohemia really offers great terroir and the wines are really, really interesting. There's not many.
And there is also like a festival in Bohemia
and so this would be for the natural wine scene that is a little bit more like creating the festivals where everybody will come and have their small stand. Otherwise, what is really popular in Czech Republic, this would be like the local festivals that we call the open cellars. And you come to nearly every small wine making village, and sometimes they're also connected with folklore festivals, and this you have to look up in the wine
internet,
calendar and the internet. But there are few big ones in, I would say, nearly each big like wine cities. Like in Mikulov, there is one at the beginning of September, and this usually is in the same term as the one in Znojmo. So you can switch 1 year to Znojmo and the second to Mikulov. But besides that, there is really like every weekend there would be open cellars somewhere. And even in the wine villages, what usually the winemakers do to provide at least some wine service to the visitors, that if there is like many cellars, like we saw on Kraví Hora together, so there are many few small cellars, but to be sure that at least 2 will be open, each of the winemaker has a special shift, and on a weekend they specify which 2 of them will be open. So like this, you know that in the village there is always somewhere to go.
You will never be thirsty.
Yes,
good.
Exactly.
And now the last thing, a little vocabulary for Polish visitors in Czech Republic, because we know that Czech and Polish, they are like very similar, but not exactly. Like for example, sklepy.
It's the wine cellar.
Exactly. So when you see sklepy, it's not sklepy, but it's the wine cellars. So you are looking for winne sklepy.
Yes.
And this is the wine cellars, and you want to go there to taste some wines and visit. Then, of course, polo suche i polo słodkie, this is easy to understand. But then, for example, for people who like more natural wines and orange wines, so skin contact wines, what is the information on the label?
It would be orange.
No, but also
on the skins, na slupkach.
Na slupkach.
Yeah.
Na slupkach. A szupkach? No.
Szupka, it means nothing. It's szlupka or slupka.
Okay.
So szlupka is something that it's not the polite way of saying, but slupka is the skin.
Okay.
So na slupkach is the correct way, but you say na slupkach because szlupki you say in the like less it's not like the school Czech.
Okay.
So
this is what I heard many times from the winemaker.
Is the same thing.
Okay, so this is what I very often see on the labels. So maybe it's important for people to
maybe on the lease.
On the lease.
Na kalech.
Na
kalech.
Na kalech. Okay, on the lease.
Na jemných kalech on the fine lease.
A że w beczce było wino, to jak?
W sudu.
Sudu.
Sud.
Widzicie? Wsód. To zupełnie coś, co nam się nie kojarzy z beczką, więc to też warto jest wiedzieć.
Ale někdo říká bečka. Some people use the word bečka,
okay.
but it's not the proper word for it. So you would always write battle.
Okay.
Sud.
Sud, okay. What else we should know about vino?
Neres, maybe? It was fermented in stainless steel.
Aha.
Wino było w nerezu.
Naraz, narazu, okej. No i później białe, czerwone.
Białe, suche.
Suche, czyli...
Wyprażno, no what do you call it?
Wytrawne.
Wytrawne.
Okej. Suche, czyli wytrawne. Polosuche, czyli półwytrawne, polosłodkie to półsłodkie, wiadomo, wszystko jest jasne. Ale tak, mnie przede wszystkim chodziło o ten skin contact i o te sklepy, które nie są dla mnie, nie były tak oczywiste. To nie jest takie proste przełożenie. No dobrze. Dziękuję ci, Klara. Mam nadzieję, że wam się podobało i że daliście radę tutaj z tym naszym angielskim i że to tylko was zachęciło do odwiedzin na Morawach, w Czechach. Ja się bardzo cieszę, że tutaj przyjechałam. Jestem tutaj pod koniec czerwca. Pogoda jest fantastyczna i chyba pójdę teraz zjeść jakąś zmarzlinę, żeby się trochę ochłodzić na koniec. Zmarzlina to lody. Także słuchajcie, szukamy oczywiście historii w winie i słyszymy się w następnym odcinku. Do zobaczenia, do usłyszenia.
So talk to you soon.
Super.
Somewhere.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye bye.